The sharp crack of leather against skin cut through the airport din like a gunshot. Heads snapped toward the boarding gate as passengers froze in place. Eyes wide, breaths caught. Diana Morales stood rigid, her hand trembling after she'd just slapped a boarding pass out of an elderly woman's shaking grasp. Seconds stretched. Then a bone-deep hush settled over the crowd. Diana's heart thundered. She blinked, trying to steady her gaze. In that heartbeat, she realized she'd gone too far. Flashback. Before the moment of reckoning, Diana had marched down the gleaming corridor of JFK's International Boarding Gate, her uniform crisp, step confident. Business travelers drifted around her like leaves in a breeze, irrelevant extras in her world of first-class privilege. She lived for the nods. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Morales," passengers whispered when they recognized her badge. In her 5 years with Skyvista Air, she'd become the invisible queen of the premier cabin. That morning, she clutched a plain boarding pass bearing the name Eleanor Graves, and her lips curled into a cold smirk. No logo, no VIP credential, no right to first class. Back in real time, Diana forced her voice steady. "Ma'am, first-class boarding isn't for people like you." Her words snapped like icicles. The woman in emerald green paused, calm as sunrise. Silver hair, a delicate cane, and a gaze that didn't waver. Diana snapped the pass from her hand. "Are you sure this is your ticket?" she demanded, voice louder now, a tremor betraying her growing uncertainty. A whisper of fear and fascination rippled through the line, then Diana's composure shattered. She flung the pass to the ground and struck. On the floor, boarding pass skittered across polished tile. Passengers gasped. No one moved to help. The woman rose, cane in hand, her eyes serene with unspoken authority. "You've just made the gravest mistake of your career." The words landed like hailstones. Diana's knees buckled. She'd assumed power, only to discover she'd stepped into someone else's test. Above the runway, somewhere in a hidden boardroom, a silent observer closed a notebook. The real game had just begun. The boarding gate buzzed with silent curiosity as the line slowly resumed its shuffle. Diana Morales stood to the side, her breath still ragged from the shock of the slap. Every passenger's gaze felt like a spotlight searing into her uniform. She pressed a gloved hand to her chest, feeling the thrum of her racing heartbeat. Across the aisle, several feet away, Eleanor Graves adjusted the ivory handle of her cane and pulled her emerald green dress smoothly into place. The simple fabric was cut to perfection, no gaudy logos, no flashes of excess. Yet, Eleanor radiated something far more valuable than flash, quiet confidence and an air of unspoken power. Diana forced herself to focus. She had a job to do, after all. First-class boarding. She squared her shoulders and marched forward, her heels clicking on the polished tile. The pass that had been flung to the ground now sat in her trembling hand. Flashback. Hours earlier, Eleanor had arrived at JFK just before dawn. She stepped out of a sleek black sedan onto the empty tarmac, the chill morning air brushing the back of her neck. The vehicle door closed with a soft thud, and her driver gave a respectful nod before slipping away. Inside the limo, her assistant Marco passed her a leather portfolio embossed with the Skyvista Air logo. Inside lay the itinerary for the day. 7:15 a.m. meet with renewable energy investors at the Harbor Club. 9:00 a.m. depart on flight SV 800 to Geneva, chartering the first-class cabin in full. 1:30 p.m. GMT. Present. $120 million, 0 cents, funding proposal to Swiss partners. 4:00 p.m. GMT. Charter return flight to JFK. Financing had been arranged through a syndicate of global banks. This week alone, Eleanor's personal foundation had dispersed nearly $50 million, 0 cents, to sustainable energy ventures. Potential investors eyed her legacy closely. As the driver reversed, the sedan's taillights winked off into the pre-dawn mist. Eleanor tucked a strand of silver hair behind her ear and settled deeper into her seat. Outside, the world still slumbered, unaware they were mere extras in a story she was writing. Back to boarding gate, Diana's pulse pounded. She'd seen VIPs before, movie stars, hedge fund managers, state officials. She'd treated them all with polished politeness, never blinking when asked to fetch a glass of champagne or adjust a seat's recline. But something about Eleanor unsettled her. She coughed, then motioned with her chin for Eleanor's pass. "Your boarding pass, ma'am." Her voice wavered only slightly. Eleanor extended the slip of paper, straightening the fold as if smoothing out an imaginary wrinkle in the air between them. Of course. Diana scanned the barcode with a trembling device. The screen displayed name, Graves, Eleanor, seat, 1A, cabin, first class. Diana swallowed. She cleared her throat and managed a clipped, "Welcome aboard, Ms. Graves." Her tone was businesslike, but ice danced at her fingertips. Flashback. That afternoon in Geneva. Eleanor had stood before a room of distinguished financiers in a vaulted hall overlooking Lake Geneva. She adjusted her scarf and delivered her pitch with unwavering composure. By 2030, we aim to reduce carbon emissions in urban centers by 40% through battery storage solutions. Today, we seek your partnership. The room had erupted in applause. Contracts were signed that afternoon. $80 million, 0 cents, to retrofit an aging grid in Zurich. $40 million, 0 cents, to expand lithium-ion facilities in southern Germany. Media outlets hailed it as the most significant sustainable energy deal of the quarter. No camera crews were present in the boarding gate, but Diana could almost hear that same wave of applause now. She blinked away the image. Back to boarding gate. Eleanor took a deliberate step forward, her cane tapping once on the glass floor. The sound was a measured drumbeat, commanding respect. Diana straightened. She raised her voice, attempting to recall her earlier bravado. "Please proceed through the gate." She stepped aside, directing Eleanor's path. Passengers parted reverently. A woman in a designer suit caught Eleanor's gaze and gave a small bow. An elderly businessman straightened his posture. It clicked in Diana's mind. This wasn't just any passenger. Someone had whispered Eleanor's name. She was a headline in tomorrow's business section. Diana's chest tightened. She forced a practiced smile and cleared her throat. "If you need anything, Ms. Graves, food, entertainment recommendations, a blanket, please let me know." Her voice regained strength, though her knuckles whitened around her service tray. She marveled at how quickly the roles could reverse. Eleanor paused mid-stride. She looked back at Diana, her serene gaze holding both compassion and a subtle edge. She inclined her head slightly. "Thank you." The single word resonated like a verdict. Diana's breath caught. In those two syllables, she heard both forgiveness and challenge. Forgiveness for having been wrong, challenge to prove she could be better. As Eleanor slipped through the gate and out of sight, Diana remained anchored to the spot. The morning sunlight glinted off her badge, but the weight she felt was heavier than any metal. A world of privilege and power had collapsed in that moment, and Diana, for the first time in her career, was uncertain how to rebuild her own. Diana Morales retreated to the service desk beyond the boarding gate, her uniform feeling suddenly too tight across her shoulders. She gripped the edge of the counter, taking a shaky breath. The hum of overhead announcements and rolling luggage wheels seemed distant now. In the past 5 years, she had mastered the art of calm under pressure. But nothing had prepared her for this. Across the terminal, Eleanor Graves had settled into an ornate leather bench by the window. The woman's emerald green dress contrasted beautifully with the modern steel and glass. With deliberate slowness, Eleanor rested her cane across her lap. Her pale blue eyes scanned the departures board, betraying no hint of fear or impatience. Diana's mind raced. What do I do now? In her training manuals, she'd read about upset passengers demanding special treatment, but this was different. This wasn't a celebrity tantrum or a travel-weary mother with a screaming child. This was someone who wore silence like armor. A fellow attendant, Jasmine, approached quietly. "Diana, you okay?" Jasmine's voice was low. Diana forced a tight smile. "I've never seen anything like it." Her voice cracked. Jasmine frowned, noticing the shimmer of tears at the corner of Diana's eyes. "Take a moment," Jasmine said. "I'll cover the desk." Jasmine slipped a hand into Diana's arm, guiding her toward a quiet corner. Diana sat on a metal bench, her heart hammering. She closed her eyes and replayed the moment, the slap, the gasp, Eleanor's unblinking stare. Why did she look so powerful? She asked herself. Across the terminal, passengers murmured among themselves. A retired couple whispered about Olivia Graves' unknown legacy in the airline world. A teenager recorded the scene on a smartphone. Suddenly, Diana realized her mistake was already viral among this small crowd. Flashback. Moments after the slap. Diana had hurled the boarding pass to the ground, expecting compliance or tears. She had been ready with her scripted apology. Until Eleanor had risen, unbowed, cane in hand. "You've just made the gravest mistake of your career." The words had landed like a punch. Diana had stammered, reaching for regulation phrases. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." But each apology dissolved under Eleanor's calm authority. The board announced final boarding for her flight. All eyes turned back to the gate. Diana had to take control again. Or so she'd thought. Back to the present, Diana took several deep, measured breaths. She needed a plan. She couldn't just hide in the corner. But how did she approach someone who clearly broke every rule of power dynamics? A soft chime from her earpiece jolted her. "Attendant Morales to gate A5, please." It was the supervisor's tone. Firm, professional, no room for error. "On my way," Diana whispered to Jasmine, who gave her a nod of encouragement before slipping away. She walked back to the gate, feeling every step as if it were through tar. Passengers shifted aside, eyes still following the aftermath of her confrontation. Eleanor remained seated, her posture unchanged. When Diana approached, the world seemed to still again. Diana raised her voice, determined to regain composure. "Ms. Graves, She paused, grasping for sincerity. "I want to apologize for my earlier behavior. It was unacceptable." Eleanor looked up, her serene gaze softening only marginally. "Your apology is noted, Ms. Morales, but words alone won't fix this." Those words tightened a knot in Diana's chest. She swallowed, nodding. "I understand. What can I do to make it right?" Her voice was earnest, trembling at the edges. Eleanor stood slowly, using her cane. Every passenger craned necks to watch. Diana's palms were clammy. "I'd like you to escort me to my seat and ensure I have all I need for the flight," Eleanor said, her tone gentle yet firm. Diana blinked. This was no punishment. It was a test of humility. She bowed her head slightly. "Yes, ma'am." She held out her arm. Eleanor took it gracefully. Together, they moved toward the jet bridge. Diana's chest tightened. This was her chance to atone. Flashback. Diana's first day. On her first day at Sky Vista Air, Diana's trainer had stressed, "Always anticipate the guest's needs. Respect is non-negotiable." Diana had laughed, chalking it up to corporate platitudes. But then, she had served a war veteran with shaky hands, and she watched the pride in his eyes when she knelt to tie his shoe. That moment had felt real. Back to escorting Eleanor, Diana paused before the entrance to the aircraft. She met Eleanor's gaze. "Ms. Graves, would you prefer cabin temperature adjusted, a blanket, refreshments?" Eleanor nodded. "A light blanket, please, it's rather cool." Diana relayed the request to the flight deck crew, feeling the weight of their stares. She minimized her pulse pounding as she walked Eleanor to seat 1A. She clicked her heels twice for emphasis, an unspoken sign of readiness. Diana handed Eleanor the blanket, then paused. "Is there anything else I can do?" Eleanor's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Just be present." Diana exhaled, holding back tears. Present. The word echoed. She realized she had spent her career mastering protocols, but tonight, the real lesson was empathy. She turned to secure Eleanor's luggage into the overhead bin and then took her post by the seat. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as boarding concluded. Diana stood tall, though inside, she was quivering with resolve. She would learn what it truly meant to serve, with dignity, respect, and humility. And she would not let this moment slip away. The cabin doors closed with a soft hiss. Light dimmed as Flight SV-810 taxied toward the runway, engines humming with latent power. Diana Morales stood at the entrance of the first-class cabin, her hands trembling just enough to betray her calm facade. Eleanor Graves was seated in 1A, ivory cane resting against the armrest, her emerald eyes watching each movement. Diana forced a steady breath. She'd delivered the blanket, checked temperature controls, and made small talk, exactly as Eleanor had prescribed. Yet the unease simmered just below her practiced smile. Something about that single word, present, resonated like a challenge. She turned to return a tray of welcome drinks. The polished metal carrier felt heavy in her grasp. 2 flutes of sparkling water glimmered under the overhead lights, condensation beating like tiny pearls. As she bent to serve Eleanor, the intercom crackled to life. "Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff." The drone of preparation sounds swelled. The flight attendant snapped into efficient choreography, straightening flight manuals, securing galley carts, offering last-minute refreshments. Diana's eyes flicked to Eleanor's seat. The older woman's posture remained regal, unmoved by the orchestrated bustle. Suddenly, a chime on Diana's earpiece. "Supervisor Morales, please report to the cockpit." Her heart lurched. The cockpit, where Captain Jonathan Reynolds and the airline's corporate executives waited. Public humiliation had given way to private reckoning. Flashback. The supervisor's warning. Moments before boarding, Diana had received a message from her supervisor, Claire Dawson. "Miss Morales, you're on thin ice. You know the performance standards. One more misstep and I can't cover for you." Diana had typed a curt acknowledgement, her knuckles whitening around the phone. Back to present, Diana clutched the tray, eyes fixed on Eleanor. She nodded curtly and placed the drinks on a side table before slipping away toward the cockpit. Inside, the mood was icy. Captain Reynolds stood beside Richard Montgomery, arms folded. On the video call screen blinked Stephen Caldwell, his gaze cutting through the hum of avionics. "Ms. Morales," Captain Reynolds began, voice firm but not unkind, "explain why you allowed that passenger to remain in first class after the incident." Diana swallowed. She had rehearsed the lines, protocol, customer service, apology. But now, in this confined cockpit, none of it felt sufficient. I understand your concerns, Captain," she stammered, "but Ms. Graves allowed me to escort her. She said I could redeem myself." Richard's lips pressed into a thin line. Stephen's eyebrows arched. The silence stretched. "Was that a formal request?" Stephen asked. "Or an attempt to manipulate company policy?" Diana shook her head. "It was neither. She tested me. Said I needed to earn respect." Stephen's expression flickered. Approval or disbelief, Diana couldn't tell. "Very well. This flight won't end in suspension. Yet. But you're under strict scrutiny. One more breach and you'll wish you had left quietly." Relief and dread washed over Diana. She nodded until her neck hurt. Flashback. Late-night training. The night before, Diana had stayed late for sensitivity training. A guest speaker, a retired pilot, had recounted an in-flight medical emergency and highlighted the importance of empathy over protocol. Diana had nodded politely, then returned to her apartment, convinced she was already above such soft skills. Back to cabin, Diana emerged from the cockpit doorway, her uniform buttoned and her chin lifted. She met Eleanor's gaze across the aisle. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, as if she'd seen the entire exchange. Diana moved to stand beside Eleanor's seat. "Ms. Graves, may I offer you a refreshment during takeoff?" Eleanor smiled, a genuine subtle twist of lips. "Yes, please." Diana retrieved a small carafe of water and poured slowly, steadying her hand. Each drop seemed to punctuate her growing resolve. Moments later, the engines roared to life. The aircraft accelerated down the runway, lifting smoothly into the sky. The cabin leaned back as gravity shifted, and Diana felt a familiar thrill. Only this time, she welcomed it as a second chance. Once airborne, she walked the aisle to ensure every passenger was settled. As she passed row after row, she noticed something new. Smiles of gratitude, nods of respect. It wasn't praise for flawless service. It was recognition that she'd faced her mistake and acted with integrity. Back at 1A, Eleanor studied Diana with bright eyes. "You have a long way to go, Ms. Morales," she said softly, "but this flight will show me what you're truly capable of." Diana inhaled. The first half of the journey would be her proving ground. The real test had only just begun. The cabin lights dimmed to a gentle glow as the flight settled into cruising altitude. Outside the oval windows, a blanket of clouds stretched toward the horizon like cotton fields under a pastel sky. Inside, however, a storm raged. Within Diana Morales, she had spent the last hour weaving through the first-class aisles, carefully attending to passengers' needs and earning nods of approval. Yet each step felt heavier than the last, as though gravity itself conspired to pull her toward the confining floor beneath her new, humbling reality. At seat 1A, Eleanor Graves reclined gracefully, her cane propped beside her on the armrest. A silk scarf draped around her neck, catching the cabin light. She turned her head, her serene gaze tracking Diana's every move. Diana lifted a tray of artisanal canapes, smoked salmon on cucumber rounds, miniature goat cheese tarts, mango-glazed shrimp skewers. The 24 items glistened like jewels. But Diana's appetite was gone. She placed one canapé in Eleanor's waiting hand and immediately stepped back. Hush fell over the cabin as Diana navigated to the rear galley. She placed the empty tray on the counter and released a shaky breath. Her uniform jacket felt like armor, too heavy to bear. The adrenaline that fueled her earlier composure had drained into a hollow ache. Flashback. The pressure mounts Diana's phone buzzed with a single message. "Performance check. 50% complete. Complete all tasks flawlessly. It was from Evelyn, the head of training and standards. It felt less like encouragement and more like a countdown clock ticking toward her professional death. Moments later, her earpiece chimed again. "Cabin crew, please report any irregularities in seat 3C. She turned, her eyes flicking to a young mother cradling a sleeping infant. The baby's soft breath rose and fell with perfect calm. Act present, Diana forced herself to move. She approached the mother, offering a soft blanket and whispering, "Would you like your baby's seatbelt checked? I'll stay until you feel comfortable." The mother offered a faint smile, a gesture of grace that made Diana's chest tighten. But as the mother's gratitude warmed the cabin, Diana's own emptiness grew. She realized that every act of service, once her source of pride, had become a bar she had to clear to survive her hidden evaluation. In the galley's mirror, Diana met her reflection. Dark circles under her eyes, hair slightly mussed beneath her cap, lips pressed thin. She looked like a soldier weary from battle. Yet the fight had only just begun. Flashback. A mentor's warning during her initial training at Sky Vista Air. Her mentor, Captain Laura Benton, had told her, "Deanna, the moment you think you control everything in first class is the moment your pride betrays you. The sky doesn't belong to you. It belongs to every soul aboard. Never forget that." Diana had laughed at the time, eager to prove her worth. Now, Captain Benton's words echoed as a warning bell. Back to Cabin A, sudden request crackled from her earpiece. "Emergency medical kit to 1A immediately." Diana's heart skipped. Eleanor had a faint cough earlier, a fleeting hint dismissed in the rush of service. She dashed back to the cart, flung open the door, and grabbed the red medical kit. Racing down the aisle, she reached Eleanor's seat and knelt beside her. Eleanor sat upright, her hand pressed to her chest. "I'm fine," she murmured, but her color was pale beneath the cabin glow. Diana's hands shook as she opened the kit. She found a small pulse oximeter and clipped it to Eleanor's fingertip. The reading, 92%, was below healthy range. "Ms. Graves, we need to monitor your oxygen," Diana said quietly, her professional tone tinged with genuine concern. She fetched a portable oxygen mask, offering it on a silver tray. Eleanor's lips curved in a faint, grateful smile. "You're full of surprises, Ms. Morales." Diana's chest constricted. She realized Eleanor wasn't testing her attention. She was reminding her of the ultimate priority, human life over metrics. As the mask settled over Eleanor's face, Diana stood, her uniform now stained with a streak of red from the first mate's emergency seal. She felt the weight of every glance, some compassionate, some skeptical. Suddenly, the intercom crackled. "Diana Morales to the cabin. Please verify cabin pressure system." Another test, another potential trap. Diana closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and steadied her racing heart. She knew in that moment she was teetering on the edge of collapse. Pride told her to retreat. Responsibility demanded she step forward. She moved with quiet determination to the cockpit door. Captain Reynolds greeted her with a curt nod. "Check cabin altitude." Her fingers flew over the panel, confirming readings. She reported back, voice steady, then turned to return to Elena. Passing through the aisles, Diana collided with a flight attendant carrying coffee. The hot cup tipped, scalding her uniform. The attendant gasped. Diana winced at the sting, yet she didn't flinch. She reached Eleanor's side, blinking back tears. Handing the attendant a towel, she murmured, "I've got this." As she gently wiped coffee from Eleanor's armrest, Diana's mind whirled. She felt battered, yes, but also resolute. At her lowest point, she realized, was where transformation began. Diana glanced up at Eleanor's calm face. Through the mask, Eleanor's eyes glowed with understanding. "It's okay," Eleanor whispered. "You're where you need to be." For the first time since takeoff, Diana felt a spark of hope ignite amidst her fatigue. The breaking point had been reached. Now came the breakthrough. Diana Morales lingered in the galley, her uniform unbuttoned at the collar, a sheen of sweat on her brow. The adrenaline crash from the earlier medical emergency left her feeling drained. Her hands trembled as she stacked cups in neat rows. She had thought the hardest part was over, but now she sensed an undercurrent, an unseen force guiding every step. She paused, remembering Eleanor's last words, "You're where you need to be." Those words had the weight of command, not suggestion. Diana's mind raced. What does she really want? A ping from her phone jolted her back to reality. A corporate memo from Training and Standards flashed on the screen. Subject: Special Assessment, Attendant Morales, Monitoring in Progress. The memo's tone was clinical, devoid of encouragement. Diana, is this an error? She thought, heart thudding. But the timestamp, 15 minutes ago, proved otherwise. Someone was watching her every move. Flashback. A private briefing. 48 hours earlier, Diana had been summoned to a closed-door session. The training room's fluorescent lights burned overhead as Evelyn Frost, head of Training and Standards, addressed her in a hush. "This isn't just any flight, Diana. You have been nominated for the Ambassador Program, our highest honor for frontline crew. But to earn it, you must demonstrate excellence under duress." Evelyn's gaze was sharp. "Tomorrow's flight with Ms. Graves will be your final assessment. Fail, and the nomination is revoked." Diana had laughed then. A promotion for dealing with one or two upset customers? But Evelyn had slid a sealed envelope across the table. Ms. Graves' itinerary, personal preferences, and a note. "Observe her closely. She is CEO. No exceptions." Reality had struck like an ice bath. The test wasn't just about service. It was about humility and adaptability when every policy could be weaponized against her. Back in the galley, Diana clutched the edge of the counter, scanning her reflection in a polished steel surface. Her reflection looked weary, eyes red-rimmed, lips pressed tight. She took a deep breath, picturing that sealed envelope and the envelope's warning. Above the hum of the aircraft, a soft chime, Attendant Morales to Gate A5. The supervisor's tone had shifted, less demanding, more curious. Diana swallowed and left the galley. In the first-class cabin, Eleanor sat upright, gownless, scarf discarded, book closed. She looked at Diana with an inscrutable expression. Diana approached with cautious steps, phone in hand. "Ms. Graves, I received a memo indicating this flight is a special assessment. I just wanted to say I understand the stakes." Eleanor's eyes twinkled. "Stakes?" she repeated softly. "Oh, Diana, it's far more than that." Diana's chest tightened. She began. "Let me show you," Eleanor said, rising to her feet. She tapped her cane on the floor, 3 sharp clicks that echoed like a secret code. Diana followed her gaze to a small server panel beneath the first-class counter. Eleanor reached up and pressed a discreet button. Suddenly, the cabin lights dimmed further. A subtle speaker hidden above Eleanor's seat crackled. A soft female voice announced, "Welcome to the CEO Experience, Level 1 Evaluation." A projected holographic interface appeared on the sidewall, displaying Diana's performance metrics. Customer satisfaction, 68%. Protocol adherence, 92%. Empathy rating, 57%. And blinking, at the bottom, time remaining 90 minutes. The passengers gasped, shifting in their seats. Diana's jaw dropped. Eleanor was in control. Eleanor smiled faintly. This flight was designed to test you. Not your technical skills, but your character. You've shown resilience, but now we evaluate your heart. Flashback. C-suite strategy meeting. 2 days earlier, in Sky Vista Air's glossy boardroom, Eleanor had sat at the head of a long mahogany table. C-level executives and HR leaders buzzed around her. "We need a new standard for customer care," Eleanor had said, tapping a pen on the table. "One that transcends scripted politeness. I want to see who among our crew embodies genuine respect." They brainstormed metrics, net promoter scores, time to complaint resolution, but Eleanor insisted on a live scenario. "Use one of our own, someone who thinks they know the ropes." She paused and pointed. "Diana Morales." Heads turned, some smiled politely, others exchanged worried glances. "She's been top of her class, but pride can blind you. Let's see how she fares when the rules shift." Back to cabin, Diana stared at the hologram. A buzzing unease filled her. This was beyond any hidden camera or surprise audit. This was a meticulously crafted gauntlet. Eleanor took her seat again. "You have 1 hour and 30 minutes to prove that respect for the passenger is more than policy, it's personal." Diana's mind raced. The clock was literal now. Each passing minute shaved off her opportunities. But clarity bloomed. This wasn't a trap. It was an invitation to growth. She squared her shoulders. "Understood, Ms. Graves." Eleanor nodded, cane tapping once. "Good." As Diana turned to face the cabin, the gentle hum of engines felt charged with purpose. The real test was just beginning, and this time she knew exactly who was pulling the strings. Diana Morales paused just inside the cabin, her posture rigid from anticipation. The holographic interface loomed faintly behind Eleanor Graves, its metrics ticking down in glaring red. She felt every eye on her back as she squared her shoulders. "Ms. Graves," Diana said, voice steady despite the thunder in her chest. "What would you like me to do first?" Eleanor regarded her with a contemplative tilt of the head. "Your instructions would be appreciated," she said softly. Then, with a subtle gesture of her cane, she summoned Diana closer. Diana approached, the soft tap of her heels echoing in the hushed cabin. Eleanor extended a gloved hand toward the interface. With a gentle touch, she activated a new screen. Level 2, Serendipity of Service. Below it scrolled 3 bullet points. Personal connection, learn a passenger's name, story, and leave a meaningful impression. Crisis management, handle an unexpected scenario beyond protocol. Empathy in action, turn a negative moment into an uplifting experience. Van's breath hitched. The tasks were clear, yet formidable. She had navigated technical service protocols and emergency procedures. Now she faced deeply personal challenges. Passenger encounter. Personal connection. Diana scanned the cabin. A fellow attendant had shown her the manifest. A war veteran in 2B. A businesswoman with a terminally ill child in 3C, and a honeymooning couple in 4A. She approached seat 2B. The veteran was a stocky man in fatigues, with a quietly worn medal pinned to his lapel. Kneeling slightly, Diana offered her hand and introduced herself. "Mr. Thompson, thank you for your service. May I offer you anything special today?" she asked. The veteran's eyes brimmed with surprise and gratitude. He shared a brief story of his deployment overseas and how he had dreamed of flying again, this time in comfort rather than danger. Diana listened intently, nodding and making mental notes. She returned minutes later with his favorite, a hot black coffee with just a splash of cream and a warm blanket folded precisely. He saluted her softly, bringing tears to her eyes. Crisis management. Not long after, a commotion erupted at the rear. The teenager in 4C had spilled her glass of juice, slicking the carpet. Passengers murmured. Protocol demanded immediate cleanup, but Diana needed to manage the embarrassment of the child. Tiana hurried back, retrieved extra napkins, then gathered the family's attention. She knelt beside the girl and quietly exclaimed, "Accidents happen, let's make this fun." She turned on the trolley lights in a playful arc and apologized sincerely, then offered a small toy airplane from the amenity kit to distract the girl. The child lit up, giggling as Diana helped her tidy the spill. Nearby passengers smiled appreciatively. Empathy in action minutes ticked away. Diana's chest tightened as she returned to Eleanor's seat. Eleanor studied her quietly, then pointed toward seat 3C. A frail mother sat beside her sleeping child, clutching a photo of the little boy propped on the armrest. Diana recognized the boy from earlier. She sensed the mother's anxiety and whispered, "Would you like to talk, or would a gentle hand on the arm help you feel more comfortable?" The mother nodded, tears welling. Diana sat, placed her hand softly on the woman's shoulder, and listened as she spoke about her son's leukemia and their journey. Diana offered to arrange access to the in-flight lounge's phone so the mother could call the doctor on the ground for reassurance. Within moments, the mother's tense frame relaxed, her gratitude evident in her eyes. Diana felt a warmth in her chest. Validation beyond any rating. Back to Eleanor, Diana approached 1A, her hands no longer shaking. She held a small notebook. "Ms. Graves, may I share what I've learned?" she asked, voice steady. Eleanor smiled. "Please." Diana opened the notebook to a clean page and began. "Mr. Thompson served our country in dreams of peaceful flights. The spill became a moment of laughter for a nervous child, and Mrs. Lyle found comfort knowing her son is not alone." Eleanor's eyes glowed with approval. She tapped her cane lightly. "You found the heart of service, Diana. It's not policy, it's connection." Diana exhaled, relief and pride mingling. She realized she had passed the second level of the test, but as the hologram flickered to reveal level 3, redemption through action, she nodded, ready for the final challenge. Passenger applause just then. A round of gentle applause rippled through first class. Passengers who had witnessed her attentiveness stood and clapped softly. Diana's cheeks warmed as she met Mr. Thompson's salute and the family's grateful smile. Eleanor closed her eyes, leaning back. "Your journey isn't over, Ms. Morales, but you're closer than you think." Diana looked around the cabin, the once judging eyes now filled with respect. The test continued, but she no longer felt alone. She had uncovered the true essence of service, humility rooted in humanity. The indicator light blinked green, cabin secure for level 3. Diana Morales stood at the center aisle, breathing deep, feeling the collective gaze of every first-class passenger. The previous challenges had tested her competence and compassion, but now came the moment of truth. Redemption through action. She approached the galley and grabbed a sealed envelope stamped with a single word in bold letters: reveal. This envelope had been tucked away earlier by an attentive flight attendant. Inside lay Diana's final instructions, directly from Eleanor Graves. "Your last task is simple yet profound. Demonstrate leadership when faced with adversity. Choose one situation that still needs resolution and transform it. Let your actions speak louder than words." Diana's heartbeat thundered. Leadership. She thought back to every procedure, every smile, every assistance she'd offered so far. But leadership meant stepping up, taking initiative for someone who couldn't ask. She scanned the cabin. The veteran nestled in his blanket, the teen giggling with her toy plane, the mother calmly talking on the lounge phone, and the honeymooners in 4A, their laughter soft as they reminisced. All seemed well, yet Diana's eyes landed on the couple's seat. The unseen need. In seat 4A, Mr. and Mrs. Patel sat close together. The wife's eyes flicked toward the window, and Diana noticed her gaze darted nervously at the seatbelt sign above. The engine roar had shaken her lightly. She had not offered a distraction or reassurance. The couple had been caught up in their own celebration. A sudden chirp from the intercom announced, "We'll be hitting an area of mild turbulence in 10 minutes. The word turbulence sparked tension in the cabin. Diana spotted Mrs. Patel's hand gripping the armrest, knuckles white. Without hesitation, Diana strode over and knelt beside them. "Mr. Patel? Mrs. Patel?" she said in a steady voice. "We'll have some mild bumps coming up. Would you prefer a calming tea or perhaps a warm blanket by your side?" The Patels exchanged glances. "Tea sounds lovely," Mrs. Patel replied, her voice trembling. Diana waved to a nearby attendant to prepare ginger lemon tea, known for its soothing properties. Then she rummaged inside her service kit and pulled out 2 eye masks, embossed with the Sky Vista logo. She leaned forward, placing a mask gently over Mrs. Patel's eyes. "These can help you relax and reduce motion anxiety," Diana explained. "If you need anything else, just squeeze my hand." When the tea arrived, Diana poured it with precision, the steam twisting into the air like tendrils of calm. She offered the cup to the couple. As they sipped, she stood by, ready to hold their hands if needed. Leadership tested suddenly, the plane shook. First a low rumble, then a sudden dip that sent a few items rattling in the galley. A collective gasp echoed. Diana sprang into action, her legs steady as oak. "Everyone please stay seated and fasten your seatbelts," she announced, in a calm, authoritative tone. "Flight attendants, secure loose items." She moved swiftly to block the aisle, guiding a startled passenger back to his seat. She barked clear, concise commands. "Tray tables up, seats upright, drink service paused." In that moment, she was no longer a reactive attendant. She was the steward of safety, the leader of this tiny world, bound by metal and sky, turning panic into poise. The turbulence lasted only a minute, but in that time, Diana's leadership had been undeniable. She returned to seat 4A as the cabin rocked gently back to calm. Mrs. Patel removed her mask, the color returning to her cheeks. She grabbed Diana's hand. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. "I thought I was going to lose it." Diana smiled, swallowing the lump in her throat. "It was my honor to help you," she replied. Across the cabin, passengers watched with newfound respect. Diana caught Mr. Thompson's eye and saw him nod approvingly. The family in 3C offered her a thumbs up. Even the crew in the galley shot her affirming glances. The presentation of redemption. Diana returned to Eleanor's seat for the last time. She knelt with purposeful grace, revealing the empty envelope. "Miss Graves, I chose to lead through the turbulence, ensuring safety and calm when fear threatened to take over." Eleanor watched, her serene gaze now warm. "Leadership isn't just about giving instructions," she said softly. "It's about stepping forward when others hesitate." She tapped her cane twice. "You've earned your redemption, Diana." The hologram flickered once more. Metrics flashed. Level 3 passed. Beneath it scrolled, "Nomination confirmed, Ambassador of Respect." A cheer rose from the first-class cabin, quiet yet heartfelt. Closing the loop, Diana exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She looked around at the faces. Passengers who moments ago saw her as an arrogant attendant now saw a leader who cared. Eleanor extended a hand, Deanna grasped it, feeling the strength in the grip. "Thank you," Deanna whispered. Eleanor offered a rare, genuine smile. "Welcome to the true heart of service." As the plane cruised above the clouds, Diana stood tall. She had faced every trial, skillfully served, spiritually tested, emotionally challenged, and finally led in crisis. She had discovered that real power belonged not to the title, but to the compassion and courage behind each choice. The seatbelt sign blinked off, the cabin lights brightened, and Diana Morales, ambassador of respect, took her first step toward a new horizon. A gentle hush settled over the first-class cabin as passengers resumed their conversations and returned to their in-flight routines. Diana Morales stood at the front, her heart still echoing the adrenaline of the turbulence and the subsequent relief. For a moment, she allowed herself a small, private smile. She had passed level 3. But the final evaluation was not about grand gestures. It was about the quiet, lasting impact she left on those around her. Deanna glanced across the aisle at Eleanor Graves. The CEO sat back, cane resting on her lap, watching Diana with those piercing, pale mule eyes. No words were exchanged, but Diana felt the unspoken command. "Now, you must show me your real self." As Diana began her routine walkthrough to ensure comfort items were in place, she overheard a small commotion at seat 5B. A passenger, a well-dressed man in his 40s, was arguing softly with a flight attendant about missed meal service. His voice pitched low but insistent. Deanna recognized the situation as another test, a chance to observe her problem-solving without drawing attention to herself. She approached silently, smiling warmly. "Excuse me, sir," she began gently. "I'm Diana Morales. I understand there was an issue with your meal. May I see how I can help?" The man looked up, relief and surprise flickering in his eyes. "Yes, please. I didn't receive my chicken entree." Diana nodded and crouched to his level. "I apologize for the oversight. Let me take care of that immediately." She stood and signaled the galley crew, then pivoted to the passenger. "In the meantime, would you care for a snack or a beverage? Perhaps our chef's special soup or a glass of white wine?" The man's stern expression softened. "Soup sounds great." Demeana led him through a brief explanation of the soup's ingredients: roasted butternut squash garnished with chives, and promised it would arrive in a few moments. She returned to her station and coordinated discreetly with the kitchen. Moments later, Deanna returned with a steaming bowl and polished tray. The passenger's eyes brightened as he inhaled the aroma. "Thank you," he said, genuinely touched. "This looks wonderful." Dina smiled, her earlier mistake with the entree eclipsed by the new interaction. She refused to simply apologize. She created a memorable experience. Empowering others. After delivering the soup, Diana spotted a junior flight attendant struggling with a stubborn overhead bin latch. The attendant's face was flushed with embarrassment as passengers waited. Deanna stepped in without hesitation. "Here, let me," she offered, unclipping her badge and setting down her service pad. With a practiced motion, she released the latch and lifted a suitcase inside. "Thank you," the attendant whispered, eyes wide. Diana placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. We're a team." She nodded toward Eleanor's seat. "That woman reminded me today that leadership means lifting others up." The junior attendant nodded, inspired. Diana returned her badge and promised to show her more tips after the flight. Subtle reversal. As the flight neared its midpoint, Diana prepared to visit Eleanor one last time before the final debrief. She straightened her skirt, smoothed her hair, and walked confidently down the aisle. Eleanor looked up with a slight smile. "I have one more question," she said, voice calm. Diana paused. "Yes, Ms. Graves?" Eleanor tapped her cane. "What have you learned about power today?" Diana thought of the slap, the tests, the turbulence, and the countless acts of service. She realized her earlier belief that power was in a crisp uniform and privileged access was flawed. True power, she now understood, was in empathy, humility, and lifting others. Power, Diana replied, is not about wielding authority. It's about serving with courage, recognizing the humanity in everyone, passenger or crew, and empowering them in moments of need. Eleanor's eyes glistened. She nodded once, sharply. Well said. Ripple effect. Diana stood and turned to the cabin. She saw the veteran tipping his salt shaker with a nod, the mother and child sharing a wry smile, the honeymoon couple offering a relaxed wave. Even the crew exchanged approving glances. These small ripples of connection were Diana's true victory. She had transformed the atmosphere from one of tension and judgment to one of calm service and mutual respect. Quiet recognition. Just then the intercom crackled. Diana Morales, please join Miss Graves in the galley. It was Evelyn Frost's voice, soft but carrying authority. Deanna walked to the galley, her steps light. She found Eleanor waiting by the service counter, arms folded, watching. Evelyn appeared, accompanied by the supervisor, Claire Dawson. Evelyn held a small, ornate box embossed with the Sky Vista crest. Deanna, Evelyn began, voice warm. You've not only passed your evaluation, you've set a new benchmark for service excellence. She opened the box to reveal a polished bronze pin shaped like a soaring bird. This is the Ambassador's Respect pin, Evelyn explained. Wear it with pride. You've earned it. Diana accepted the pin with tremulous fingers. She pinned it carefully above her heart, feeling its weight, a symbol of all she had overcome, enduring impact. As Diana pinned the emblem, Eleanor stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Diana looked up, meeting her gaze. Remember, Eleanor said, today was never about tests or metrics. It was about revealing who you truly are and who you can become. Diana nodded, tears prickling. She understood now that every passenger touched, every colleague empowered, had woven together her true legacy. The galley doors slid closed behind them. The flight continued, but for Deanna Morales, nothing would ever be the same. She had been tested, humbled, and ultimately transformed into the leader and attendant she was always meant to be. The cabin lights brightened to a warm glow as Flight SV-810 began its final descent. Outside, the world tipped gently beneath a carpet of clouds, the sun dipping low on the horizon. Inside first class, a hush fell, an unspoken signal that something pivotal was about to unfold. Diana Morales stood at the front of the cabin, heart pounding with a mixture of pride and disbelief. In one hand, she held the loose end of Eleanor Graves's ivory-handled cane. In the other, a small slip of paper embossed with the words, Ambassador of Respect. The polished bronze pin now rested above her heart, a metal testament to her transformation. Eleanor rose from seat 1A, cane tapping softly against the aisle floor. Passengers straightened in their seats. The veteran in 2B sat at parade rest. The businesswoman from 3C grasped her child's hand, and the honeymoon couple in 4A leaned forward in unified attention. Even the cabin crew gathered at discrete intervals, eyes bright with anticipation. Diana swallowed and stepped beside Eleanor's seat. Her polished shoes clicked in time with the rapid beating in her ears. She raised her chin and gave a respectful nod to the CEO. Ladies and gentlemen, Eleanor's voice rang clear through the cabin, amplified by the PA system. Before we land, I wish to share a story of humility, service, and respect. A collective inhale rippled through the cabin as every passenger focused on Eleanor's poised silhouette. She glanced at Diana with steady pride. "This morning, I boarded this flight as a passenger like any other," Eleanor began, her tone calm yet commanding. "I underestimated the power of compassion and the depth of character behind a uniform. What I experienced today was not just service, it was genuine humanity." She paused, letting her words sink in. Diana felt a flush of warmth as she looked around and saw nods, tears, and even a few smiles glimmering in the cabin lights. "Flight attendant Diana Morales," Eleanor continued, lifting Diana's hand for all to see, "faced every challenge, shock, crisis, and even personal vulnerability with dignity and grace. She saved a veteran's sense of pride, comforted a mother's fear, and led us safely through turbulence. But more than that, she lifted her colleagues, empowered her passengers, and honored our shared humanity." A murmur of applause swept through the rows, gentle at first, then swelling into heartfelt gratitude. Diana's eyes filled, not from sorrow, but from a profound sense of vindication. Every doubt, every trembling moment had led to this crescendo. Eleanor leaned into the mic. "Diana, you have passed every test, not because you followed protocols perfectly, but because you led with your heart. It is my honor to appoint you as SkyVesta Air's first ambassador of respect, a position you have earned beyond any classroom or checklist." At her words, the cabin erupted into a standing ovation. Passengers rose from their seats. Mr. Thompson saluted. The mother hugged her child and blew Diana a kiss. The honeymooners offered a toast with water glasses. Even the crew clapped in unison, their professional reserve replaced by genuine celebration. Diana's cheeks burned as she stepped forward. Her voice found strength despite the emotion choking her. "Thank you," she said, her tone shaking yet determined. "I promise to carry this responsibility with humility and to serve every passenger, every member of this SkyVesta family with respect, compassion, and courage." Eleanor nodded approvingly. She tapped her cane twice, and the holographic interface flickered one last time, displaying 3 simple words: justice, humility, leadership. Underneath, a final message scrolled: "Mission accomplished." As the applause continued, Diana looked out the window. Below, the sprawling city lights began to twinkle as the plane descended. The journey had not just been a flight, it had been a passage through self-discovery, a test of character, and a triumph of empathy over arrogance. She turned to Eleanor. "Ms. Graves, I could never have imagined learning so much from a passenger." Her voice softened into a genuine smile. Eleanor's pale male eyes gleamed. "We are all travelers, Diana, and sometimes the greatest lessons come from those we least expect." Diana stepped back, letting the applause wash over her. In that moment, she understood the true crescendo of justice. Not punishment or shame, but recognition and redemption. The cabin had transformed from a stage of conflict to a sanctuary of mutual respect. As the plane's wheels kissed the runway with a gentle thud, Diana stood tall. No longer the proud attendant who believed power lay in rules, but a humble leader who knew that real authority springs from serving others. The passengers rose, retrieving luggage, sharing stories of the remarkable flight. And Diana, SkyVesta's ambassador of respect, watched with quiet gratitude, knowing she had reached the pinnacle of her journey and that her story would inspire many more. The terminal buzzed with activity as Flight SV-810's passengers disembarked under the golden light of the late afternoon sun. The cargo hold ejected luggage onto conveyor belts, and the distant roar of jet engines receded. Yet for Diana Morales, the moment she stepped onto the jet bridge felt surreal. No longer the same attendant who had slapped a boarding pass hours ago, but someone transformed by trials she could never have expected. She paused before the glass doors leading into Sky Vista Air's VIP lounge, running a hand through her hair. The polished marble floor reflected her now proud stride. Passengers she had served. Mr. Thompson, the Patels, the mother and child, passed by, offering waves and gratitude that made her heart flutter with both pride and humility. Inside the lounge, a group of senior airline executives had gathered. Richard Montgomery stood by a long table adorned with champagne flutes, certificates, and a single elegant crystal award etched with the Sky Vista crest. Next to him were Captain Jonathan Reynolds, head of in-flight training, Evelyn Frost, and Chief People Officer Maria Liu. At their side, Eleanor Graves sat regally, draped in an understated cashmere shawl, her eyes capturing each aroma. Diana took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Diana," Evelyn called out warmly, her tone a contrast to the formal surroundings. "Congratulations on completing the ambassador program evaluation." She gestured to the crystal of compassion, a prism that caught and refracted light into a myriad of colors. It sat on a velvet cushion beneath a glass dome. Richard cleared his throat. "In recognition of your extraordinary performance, from crisis leadership to quiet empathy, culminating in a transformative journey, we are pleased to present you with this crystal of compassion and officially designate you as Sky Vista Air's first ambassador of respect." Applause rippled through the room. Diana's cheeks flushed. She accepted the crystal, careful not to drop its delicate base. The weight in her hands felt symbolic, a fusion of responsibility and honor. Eleanor rose and extended the ornate Ambassador of Respect certificate. Diana grasped it, reading Eleanor's words aloud. "For exemplary humility, leadership, and unwavering commitment to service." She felt a lump in her throat as she turned to meet Eleanor's gaze. Diana began, her voice catching. She steadied herself. "I want to thank everyone, my colleagues, the crew, and of course, Ms. Graves, for guiding me through these lessons. This isn't just my award. It belongs to each person who reminded me what service truly means." Maria Liu stepped forward, handing Diana a gold-embossed pin to wear on her uniform's lapel. "We believe this pin will serve as a constant reminder of our core values," Maria said. "That respect and empathy are the true currency of our profession." Diana affixed the pin above her heart, the metal catching the light. She felt transformed. The glimmer of the crystal in one hand, the pin on her chest, the certificate in her other hand. A triad of symbols, marking her rebirth. Reflection with the mentor. Later, in a quieter corner of the lounge, Diana found Captain Laura Benton waiting. Her mentor's silver hair caught the light, and her uniform bore decades of service stripes. "Laura," Diana said softly, "you said I would learn most from my mistakes." Captain Benton nodded. "Mistakes are our greatest teachers. How do you feel?" Diana gazed at her reflection in the lounge's mirrored glass. She saw someone both familiar and new. "Humbled," she admitted, "but empowered. I finally understand that respect isn't earned through condescension or protocols. It's earned through human connection and courage in the face of fear." Captain Benton placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did more than earn a title. You set a new standard." Passengers' reactions. As Diana returned to the lounge's seating area, she spotted familiar faces from flight SV-810. Mr. Thompson approached, saluting and offering heartfelt congratulations. The Patels smiled. The mother hugged her child, and even the honeymoon couple presented her with a small thank you card. These small tokens, handwritten notes of gratitude, were more meaningful than any corporate accolade. Diana realized that the real impact of her actions lived in these exchanges, not just in the ceremony. Organizational change. Over the next few days, SkyVesta Air's headquarters began rolling out new training modules inspired by Diana's journey. A live-streamed town hall featured Diana recounting her experiences, emphasizing empathy drills, real scenario simulations, and crisis leadership labs for all cabin crew. Evelyn Frost announced changes to the performance evaluation system, adding an empathy score to crew assessments and introducing surprise service evaluations with senior leadership aboard random flights. Richard Montgomery commented in the internal newsletter, "Diana's transformation embodies the future of customer care. Our passengers deserve authenticity, warmth, and unwavering respect." Diana's personal growth. At home that evening, Diana sat at her kitchen table, placing the certificate and crystals side by side. She brewed a cup of chamomile tea, no caffeine tonight, and reflected on how far she had come. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jasmine, the attendant who first offered to cover her desk. "Heard the news. Congratulations. Proud to call you my colleague." Demeanor smiled and typed back, "Thank you. Let's keep raising the bar together." She sank into her chair, the weight of her journey settling over her like a soft blanket. The mistakes, the tests, the moments of fear, they had all woven together into her new identity. Final lesson with the CEO. A week later, Diana was summoned to Eleanor's office at SkyVesta Air's Manhattan headquarters. The corner office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. Eleanor stood by an artfully arranged shelf of aviation memorabilia. "Diana," Eleanor said, turning to face her, "you've been a catalyst for change. But remember, the journey doesn't end with an award. It evolves with each passenger you serve." Diana nodded. "I understand, Miss Graves. I will continue to lead with humility and respect." Eleanor smiled faintly. "Good. Now, I have one more opportunity for you. A seat at the next executive retreat, where we'll shape the future of our company." Diana's eyes widened. "An invitation to the retreat?" Eleanor handed her a leather-bound folder. "Your insights and experiences belong at the table. I want you there." Diana felt the breadth of her transformation crystallize. From an arrogant attendant who judged passengers by their boarding passes to a leader, invited into the highest circle of decision-making. Her journey had come full circle. She bowed her head in gratitude. "Thank you. It's an honor I will never take for granted." Closing. Reflection. That evening, Diana sat at her desk, reviewing the retreat agenda. New initiatives, inclusive service design, emotional intelligence training, passenger-focused innovation. She paused, closing her eyes. She remembered the fear in Mrs. Patel's eyes, the veteran's silent salute, the pat of gratitude from Jasmine. Those moments, more than any award or title, defined her mission. Diana opened her eyes and reached for her pen, ready to draft her recommendations. The path ahead was uncharted, but she was no longer afraid of the journey. After all, she had learned that true service was not about seats or status. It was about hearts and humanity. And in that knowledge lay the power to change an industry. The final boarding announcement echoed through the terminal, but for Diana Morales, time seemed to stretch. She stood in the VIP lounge doorway, watching as the last passengers, her fellow travelers on flight SV-810, gathered their belongings and drifted into the bustling terminal beyond. The golden afternoon light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. Diana's uniform bore the newly earned Ambassador of Respect pin, and the soft glow of the Crystal of Compassion lay neatly on the reception table. Yet, the real treasures were not the physical tokens, but the lessons etched in her heart. Her gaze settled on Eleanor Graves. The CEO moved with quiet grace toward the exit, her cashmere shawl trailing behind like a banner of authority. Passengers paused to acknowledge her presence. Whispers of, "Thank you, Ms. Graves," and small nods of respect followed her path. Diana felt a pang of gratitude and a spark of melancholy. This chapter of her life was closing, and the spark of transformation she'd ignited had begun to glow bright in others' silent farewell. Eleanor reached the lounge's glass doors, pausing to glance back. Deanna stepped forward, heart pounding. She remembered the very first moment they'd faced each other at the boarding gate. Then, Eleanor had been an imposing stranger. Now, she was a mentor, a guide. "Miss Graves," Diana called softly. Eleanor turned, her pale blue eyes meeting Diana's with warmth. "Diana." Her voice carried both authority and affection. They shared a moment of quiet understanding. Words felt insufficient, so Eleanor offered a nod of allegiance, a gesture of mutual respect. Before crossing the threshold, Eleanor raised her hand in a subtle wave, never breaking the bond of gazes. Then, with her cane's rhythmic tap, 3 deliberate clicks, she slipped through the doors and into the crowd. Deanna watched until Eleanor's figure disappeared. She exhaled, whole worlds of emotion converging, admiration, hope, and the bittersweet ache of farewell. Ripples in the Sky Vista community. Over the next week, stories of Flight SV-810 spread across the company's internal network and social media. Crew members shared highlights of the ambassador program. Passengers posted heartfelt thank you messages. Sky Vista respect trended among staff channels. Diana received dozens of emails, invitations to speak at training sessions, requests for interviews with the corporate newsletter, and messages from ground staff sharing how they'd been inspired to greet every passenger with genuine warmth. But one message stood out, a simple note from the veteran Mr. Thompson. "Diana, you reminded me that even after my service, I still deserve dignity. Thank you." A small gesture, but it reinforced the far-reaching impact of one compassionate act. Personal reflection. Diana sat at her kitchen table that evening, a cup of chamomile tea steaming before her. She flipped through a leather-bound journal filled with notes from her journey, initial missteps, test scores, reflections on empathy, moments of triumph. Beneath the final entry she wrote, "Today, I realized service is not a checklist. It's a promise to honor the humanity in each person." She closed the journal and paused. The path ahead was full of possibility, new responsibilities at the executive retreat, opportunities to shape company culture, and the chance to mentor others. Yet, she knew the journey was ongoing. Each flight, each passenger, would be a new chapter waiting to be written. A call to the audience. High above the Atlantic, somewhere between runway and cruising altitude, lies the heart of service, and it's beating within us all. Diana's story is not just hers. It's a reminder that we each hold the power to transform moments of judgment into acts of respect. Now, dear reader, it's your turn to reflect. Have you ever experienced a moment where empathy changed the course of an interaction? What small acts of kindness have stayed with you? In your own life, how can you become an ambassador of respect? Share your stories in the comments below. Your voice is part of the journey, because every story of compassion, every ripple of respect, helps shape a kinder, more understanding world. Thank you for joining Diana Morales on this flight through humility, leadership, and heart. We look forward to reading your experiences and continuing this journey together. Here are some additional audience interaction prompts you can sprinkle throughout your video or description to drive engagement in natural American English. What would you have done if you were in Diana's shoes? Share your reaction below. Has anyone ever taken a risk to help a stranger? Tell us your story. In one word, how does this story make you feel? Drop it in the comments. Tag someone who needs to hear this reminder about kindness today. If you could give Diana one piece of advice, what would it be? Feel free to mix these into your narration or end screen cards to spark conversation and build community.